Welcome to the Therapy by Choice podcast, where we offer educational information on a variety of mental health topics. We speak to specialists in the field, and we answer your questions. My name is Robyne Vance. I'm an associate marriage and family therapist here at Therapy by Choice and your host for this podcast. Therapy by Choice is a private practice with offices located in San Jose and Palo Alto, California. At Therapy by Choice, we provide both in-person and virtual therapeutic services for individuals, couples, and families. People seek therapy for many reasons, whether you are a couple needing more insight into your relationship, a couple on the verge of breaking up, an individual who may be experiencing depression and anxiety or career changes, or families grieving the loss of a loved one or needing guidance. Here at Therapy by Choice, we are skilled and prepared to help in many areas. A listing of our specialties can be found at www.therapybychoice.com and click on Services. We do offer a free 15-minute consultation for you to speak with a therapist to see if therapy and the therapist are a fit for your needs. To speak with us to see how we can meet your needs, please call or text us at 408-786-9651. That's 408-786-9651. Or visit our website at www.therapybychoice.com, where you can read about our practice, the areas in which we offer services, and read about our staff. That's www.therapybychoice.com. Therapy by Choice, helping clients feel better. Welcome to the Therapy by Choice podcast. My name is Robyne Vance. In this episode, I'll be discussing a process that starts even before you see a therapist for the first time and is an important part of the overall therapy process, but some may not have an awareness of or knowledge on what to do. So, I'll be spending today's episode talking about how to find a therapist. As a therapist, it is my duty to provide psychoeducation, which is just a really big word for providing information. I do this by giving people tools needed to participate in their own therapeutic journey. I provide psychoeducation to my clients, but for me, this also extends outward to potential clients, those seeking consultation, as well as those who I take calls, emails, and inquiries about therapy services from. I also freely share this information with everyone and anyone because a large part of the success of therapy and positive therapeutic outcomes is finding a therapist that is a good fit for your needs. So, let's get into it. I want to emphasize the importance of taking the time to do your research to find a therapist that is going to be just right for your therapeutic journey. After all, this is the person with who you're going to be the most vulnerable with and with whom you'll bare yourself to. Get it? Bare as in Goldilocks? So like the title of the episode indicates, we have to do some testing to find out what therapist will be just right. Step 1 is to do your work. Ask yourself a few key questions. What is the reason or reasons why you are seeking therapy? What are your goals? What are you struggling with? And what areas of your life are being impacted? If you are attending therapy as part of a couple or a family, these questions should be answered conjointly. Now, let's look at a few examples. Donna is a 34-year-old female who lost her mother 3 months ago after a short battle with cancer. Donna is finding it difficult to show up to work on time. She is not sleeping and has lost some weight. Donna just wants to feel better. she goes to her primary care physician, who advises her to look into seeing a therapist. In this example, Donna may be seeking therapy for help with grief and feelings of depression and needing coping skills because she is having difficulty sleeping and difficulty showing up to work on time, which are affecting both her home and professional life. Donna's goal, although vague at first, is just to feel better. Let's look at another example. Jack and Jill have been married for 12 years and have 2 children. They both report the other party doesn't listen, and they have frequent arguments at home and in public, often without ever coming to a resolution. Both parties report they are considering divorce, but want to give therapy a try first. In this example, Jack and Jill may be seeking therapy for issues surrounding a lack of communication and needing conflict resolution skills as the frequent arguments are occurring both at home and in the public. Their goal might be to see if therapy can help, as they may want to avoid divorce. Now, you can be as detailed or as vague as you'd like with this first step. But I do recommend writing down your why someplace so that it is available, as a therapist will ask these questions as part of the interview or consultation process. Also, of course, your therapist will be able to help you to create goals once you have started therapy, as well as help you identify symptoms and looking at the need for therapy. So to summarize step 1, make sure to think about and document what is the reason or reasons why you are seeking therapy. What are your goals? What are you struggling with? And what areas of your life have been impacted? Now let's move on to step 2. If you listen to nothing else I say in this podcast about how to find a therapist, don't skip step 2, as I would argue this is probably one of the most important details to consider when choosing a therapist. Turn up the volume and listen really closely. All right, the therapist actually matters. Be aware of your preferences for the actual therapist and be comfortable with why those preferences may be important to you. These can include factors like having a Black therapist, or having a female therapist, or having a therapist that speaks your preferred language, or having an LGBTQ+ affirming therapist. Oftentimes, this is something that works to enhance and improve the therapeutic alliance and can lead to better therapeutic outcomes. It is important to feel like you have someone who can understand you and may also have an awareness of your struggles and with whom you can build a strong rapport with. Let's take a look at a few examples. Poppy is a 42-year-old woman who wants therapy to help resolve her childhood trauma surrounding her alcoholic and verbally abusive father, as it is affecting her ability to establish and maintain healthy romantic relationships. Poppy does a search of therapists in her area, and she finds several names: John Doe and Jane Ray. Although both John and Jane might have the correct clinical qualifications to help Poppy, considering her background and reasons for seeking therapy, it would be understandable why Poppy may choose Jane over John. To summarize step 2, keep in mind if you have preferences and know that it is totally okay to be specific with your ask of a therapist, and you do not have to explain the why behind your preferences. Again, it has to be the right fit. Step 3. What therapy style speaks best to you? Therapy style is how the therapist interacts with the client or clients. This may include what techniques the therapist uses, what are their areas of expertise, what is their interaction style, and what is their therapeutic style. Here are some things to consider. What style may or may not work for you? Tone of voice, back and forth exchanges with the therapist, how they ask questions, and how they challenge you. Are you wanting directives and assertion, or are you wanting a therapist who is more collaborative? Now keep in mind, the therapist isn't there to solve all your problems or tell you what to do, but rather they will advise you and present solutions you may not have thought of or be aware of, and will help you work through challenges. Let's take a look at an example. George is a 21-year-old college student who is struggling to decide whether to go to grad school or enter the workforce. Because of this, George has started to withdraw from normal activities, and he recently failed a big test. George's academic counselor suggests that he access the school's counseling department and speak with someone. The first counselor George sees is Meredith, who is also a professor in the psychology department at the university. Meredith welcomes George and listens to his concerns. She gives her feedback, advising him that grad school is the only viable option. After not getting much from that session, George requests to speak with another counselor. The second counselor George sees is Mary. Mary appears to be a few years older than George, is also a former student at the university, has a laid-back approach. She asks George follow-up questions and uses self-disclosure in appropriate amounts to help George have the available skills and tools to make a decision about his next move. With Meredith, her style was more directive, whereas Mary's was more collaborative. To summarize, ask questions about the therapist's style and note how you respond or if you resonate with their message. Moving right along to step number 4. Consider what treatment modality and treatment techniques may work best for your therapeutic needs. Now, this might not weigh as heavily on your decision to choose a therapist as the other steps we've discussed, or the steps we will discuss after this, but it's important to know that therapists usually align with a specific theoretical approach that will influence how they approach therapy. Most types of therapy will have some shared or similar features. Some common types of therapy are cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, psychodynamic therapy, dialectical behavior therapy, or DBT, and humanistic therapy, just to name a few. Now, as discussed in episode 1 of this podcast when I introduced myself, I primarily use CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy. But I also pull from other modalities as well, depending on the need. A simple Google search with the keywords "list of therapy modalities" will produce a list of approaches and what their focuses are. It's time for another example. Carla is a 72-year-old woman seeking therapy after she started experiencing panic attacks daily as the result of a car crash earlier this year. The car crash left her with physical injuries and vivid memories of the crash. After doing some research, Carla looks into EMDR, a therapy technique that can help with reprocessing traumatic memories. Carla calls a few offices and reaches Amanda, a therapist who has immediate availability and is close to Carla's home, but states she uses CBT and is not trained in or certified in EMDR. Carla weighs her options. To summarize step 4, simply ask the therapist what their treatment modality and what techniques they use and how they plan to use it to help you with your identified goals. Step number 5, availability. There are two factors to consider in regards to availability: your availability and the therapist availability. Let's start with your availability, as this is what needs to be determined before starting the search for a therapist. And I will say, when I say your availability, I mean both your physical and emotional availability. Let's dive into that. First, your physical availability. What day are you hoping to have your sessions on, and at what time? Now, you don't necessarily have to consider how often you will go to therapy or for how long you will attend therapy, as that will be something you and your therapist will discuss when meeting. But be sure to have at least 3 to 5 days and times noted and rank them in order of preference in anticipation that your preferred time slot may not be available. To note, most therapy sessions are 50 minutes in length. That's 50 minutes in length. Now, your physical availability should also link to your emotional availability. As I mentioned, therapy is some of the hardest work you'll ever do. When making a decision on your availability, consider how you would feel if you were to schedule your therapy during your lunch hour as opposed to waiting until you're off of work, or scheduling therapy on weekends as opposed to on a Wednesday. You'll want to be sure that you are in the right headspace before your therapy session and also have ample time to continue processing what occurred in therapy, especially if it's a tougher session. Next is the therapist's availability. This can be very tricky. First, you need to ask if the therapist or the practice is taking new clients. After that, ask about the therapist's hours. What days and times do they currently have availability, and what is the length of the session? Also, be sure to ask about the cancellation and rescheduling policies. Availability of a therapist may vary by geographical location and needs of the area. For example, I live in a large city, so I offer sessions on Sunday. Now, needless to say, my Sundays are very full, as this is a highly desired day for folks to come to therapy. Let's take a look at an example. The Baker family consists of a mother, father, and 2 sons. They decide as a family to seek therapy to help cope with the loss of their younger sister and daughter. The father is retired but does not want to go to sessions on Wednesdays as he likes to golf. The mother is a nurse who works the day shift and has Mondays and Tuesdays off. The first son is a teacher and lives about 30 minutes away from the rest of the family and leaves school around 5 p.m. The second son is in college and attends class every day from 7 a.m. until around 2 p.m. The family finds Dr. Smith, who currently has openings on Thursday at 1, Thursday at 5, and Saturday at 10 a.m. Now, would any of those openings work for the Baker family? To summarize in step 5, have a list of your preferred dates and times available when making a decision and when making calls about therapeutic services. Step 6, location, location, location. Now, as a function of the COVID-19 pandemic, in-person therapy services were mostly switched to virtual, with some therapy practices choosing to no longer have an actual office and now only offer online therapy. Now, I will say this, where you have therapy matters. Let's take a look at both in-person and virtual options. Now, online therapy offers an option for us as therapists to reach more people with our services. There are those who have physical health conditions or who are housebound or have anxiety that make it difficult to leave the home. or who have scheduling or transportation difficulties. Also, for those living in areas that are remote and have less services, online therapy is a great option that can be done from the comfort of your home. A few things to consider if you are looking into or wanting to do therapy online. Internet. You need to be sure to have a good, strong internet connection. Environment. It's important to have a quiet, secluded place where you can freely talk. Lastly, check with your therapist, as each therapist has different guidelines to where they may be allowed to practice. For example, I am only able to practice within the state of California. So even though someone living in Nebraska may want me to be their therapist, I would be unable to see them, even virtually. Now, in-person therapy does offer many advantages as well. Having a completely separate place and a welcoming office can make a difference in how you are able to process. For couples, I strongly recommend in-person therapy, as usually the home has become a place where conflict exists. An important goal for me in couples therapy is to try to restore peace to the home. And as some sessions can be emotionally charged, it's best to have a neutral place to receive services other than the home. In-person therapy also makes it easier to do therapeutic exercises, and most therapy offices are equipped for sessions with fidget toys, comfort objects, comfortable seating, snacks, and refreshments to improve the experience. When performing your search, be sure to establish if your therapist offers in-person, online, or phone options, and clarify if you will be allowed to switch settings when desired. For example, telehealth this week, in-person next week. Time for another example. 13 months ago, Dennis, who has bipolar 2, lost his job and recently had his car repossessed for not making payments, and he hasn't left his home in 4 months due to being depressed. He sees a psychiatrist, Dr. Ed, every few months to discuss how his medications for his bipolar are working. Sensing Dennis is not coping well, Dr. Ed makes referral for Dennis to see a therapist. Dennis receives a call back from Right On Time Therapy asking if he prefers in-person or virtual sessions. To summarize, in Step 6, we should set our preference for either in-person or virtual sessions and have that preference ready and available when we make our phone calls. Step number 7, cost. Now be sure to pay attention to some of the tips I give in this section, as they may help you determine how to pay for your services. Now, I see therapy as an investment. That being said, the cost to time and potentially the wallet does need to be considered. If you have insurance and are wanting insurance to pay for your services, start your search on your provider's webpage as to have access to in-network therapists where you might only be responsible for your copay. Also, if you are seeking couples therapy, be sure to ask if this is a covered benefit. Couples therapy is often not a covered benefit due to there being no medical necessity. In kind, when you call offices, ask if they take insurance and ask if they take your specific insurance. If you're paying out of pocket, ask what forms of payment are accepted. Most offices will take cash, check, credit cards, and some might take your HSA or FSA card if it has a credit card logo. Now, there are some instances where insurance will authorize you to seek an out-of-network therapist, and the insurance company will reimburse you. In those instances, you would still be responsible for the upfront payment of your sessions, But ask the therapy office if they can provide to you what's called a super bill, so you can then turn that into insurance to see if they will reimburse you. Now, something important I want to mention is that in order to bill insurance, you need a diagnosis to prove medical necessity. Now, diagnosing is a part of the normal therapeutic process, but if you're not comfortable with having a documented diagnosis with insurance, you may want to consider paying out of pocket for your sessions. Also, be aware that your receiving of services may be determined by your diagnosis, and some insurance carriers have plan-specific coverage, as well as limits for the amount of sessions based on diagnosis. For example, if you have depression, your insurance provider may determine they will cover a certain amount of sessions that they deem are needed to clinically treat depression. Also, if you are planning to use insurance, be aware that some of your preferences, such as gender and availability, may have to take a backseat in favor of what insurance is willing to cover. Now, if the cost of therapy is a bit high and you will be paying out of pocket, you can ask the therapist or practice if they offer a sliding scale rate. Now, a sliding scale rate is a fee per session based on the client's financial ability to pay. Sliding scale can make it easier for those who do not have insurance, but whom out-of-pocket costs are a little steep to receive services based on their financial situation. That being said, not every practice offers a sliding scale rate, and there usually are a limited number of sliding scale clients that a therapist may be willing to see. And sliding scale may mean taking a less desirable time or date for your session, and you also may be asked to provide proof of income. And if your financial situation improves, notify your therapist as to be able to help others who may need that sliding scale rate. Also, if you work for an employer who has an EAP or Employee Assistance Program, they may have a benefit where you can receive a certain amount of no-cost confidential therapy sessions per calendar year or benefit year for personal and/or work-related issues. Now, let's take a look at some examples related to cost. Dusty is 38 years old and identifies as non-binary and uses they/them pronouns. Dusty has dealt with anxiety on and off for many years and is recently finding it affecting their ability to concentrate at work. Dusty really would prefer a therapist with lived experience in the LGBTQ community, but when they called their insurance company's customer service, they were told by the agent that that was not an option that could be included in the search criteria. Frustrated, Dusty drops their search. Let's take a look at another example. Terry has been on the waiting list for a therapist with her health plan for several months, as she does not want to be seen for online sessions and is requesting in-person sessions only. Finally, her health plan approves her to seek a therapist of her own choosing and gives her an authorization. Terry finds a great therapist, but they are out of her health plan's network. Terry calls her health plan back, who says she can see her chosen therapist if she pays out of pocket and to submit the bill to them for reimbursement. Terry books her first appointment with the therapist. To summarize step 7, be aware that therapy can be costly, but there are also many options available to make therapy affordable, as well as options that do offer more choices. Step 8. Leverage the power of the internet, family, friends, and colleagues in your search for a therapist. NAMI is the National Alliance of Mental Illness and generally has county-specific chapters which include information on low-cost therapy options. 211, which can be dialed from any phone, may also have resources for mental health and substance abuse therapy options. Also, a simple Google search of therapy directories or keyword search, such as Black Therapists in Miami, will likely help you with your search. Now, if you know of a friend, family member, or colleague that you trust, enlist them for help, especially if you might be aware they also go to therapy. Now, the biggest tip I can offer to make sure a therapist is the right fit is to ask if they offer a consultation. A consultation is generally a free set amount of time where you can meet with the therapist to see if therapy and the therapist are a fit for your needs. Most consultations can be offered in the same 3 settings: in-person, virtual, and phone. The time for consultations is usually about 15 minutes. Take full advantage of that time, and I encourage people to seek multiple consultations to find the right fit if you don't already have someone in mind. During your consultation, ask all the questions: the therapist approach, availability, cost, cancellation policy, etc. In turn, I also use my consultations to make sure I'm the right fit for the client or clients, as there may be areas they may not fully be qualified or comfortable with to help. In those situations, I can refer the person on to another therapist who may be a better fit. I also will offer information about how I work as a therapist to make sure my clients have all the available details to make an informed decision on whether to start therapy with me or not. Now it's time for our final example, which highlights the importance of consultations. Candy and Ken are engaged and want to go to premarital counseling before getting married to work on deepening their connection and to help resolve past issues. They get the name of one therapist from a friend and 2 others from doing an internet search. The first therapist does not offer a free consultation and is reluctant to answer their questions, so they are hesitant on booking a session. The second therapist offers a consultation and answers their questions, but will not have availability for at least a month or more. The last therapist offers a free consultation, answers all their questions, feels like a good fit for both, and can see them for their first session directly following the consultation. To summarize this final step, look around and enlist help when needed with your search. Well, I know that was a lot of information, and we'll be discussing more about the processes that go into the background of therapy in future episodes. I want to thank you, the listener, for joining me for this episode of the Therapy by Choice podcast. Don't forget to like, follow, and share this podcast, and feel free to reach out if you have a question or would like to request a specific topic to be covered. You can text us at 408-786-9651 or email us at robyn@therapybychoice.com. That's Robyne, ROBYNE, @therapybychoice.com. Also, visit our website at www.therapybychoice.com. My name is Robyne Vance. Take good care. While we hope to provide insight and education, our podcast does not replace therapy, and listening to our podcast does not establish a therapeutic relationship. If you or someone you know are in crisis, please call the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline by dialing 988.